Get Bradley Cooper on the phone. Jake Lloyd needs a star. Jake Lloyd deserves an Oscar for Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace. Get Bradley Cooper on the phone.
The Phantom Menace. Written and directed by George Lucas. An all-time epic masterpiece. Yes, The Phantom Menace is an all-time epic masterpiece, both as a story and a myth, a veil or a tale, if you will, totally make-believe, and a text to be studied and, in many cases, revered, and perhaps followed according to one's own philosophy or sense of wanting it to be. There's a lot of politics in The Phantom Menace, and also a lot of philosophy and religion, if you will. Spiritual thinking, if you will. An all-time epic masterpiece. Visually ground-breaking special effects. Innovating and inventing. New and previously thought of as impossible ways and methods for doing things to make a movie. And now, because of George Lucas and the prequels, starting with The Phantom Menace, as Jar Jar is the key, as we will see, this has impacted and caused to be changed forever our modern culture as well as a civilized society. Everything from the name Star Wars to the implementation of some of the tech only seen in the movies, starting with The Phantom Menace, and now is a reality in our own lives. Right, and we're witnessing this right now as you're hearing this. Through the miracle of Jar Jar. Jar Jar is the key. The prequels is the best Star Wars. And I am your host, Mr. The Prequels. It's not even up for debate by any standard, metric, rubric, or ruler. The Phantom Menace is an all-time epic masterpiece. Right, not only groundbreaking special effects, but also all new characters and a completely different tone than we had seen before in any of the other Star Wars chapters. Starting with the opening title crawl for The Phantom Menace. Written and directed by George Lucas, an all-time epic masterpiece. The Phantom Menace is the most different Star Wars chapter you will ever witness, including Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. And each of these movies, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, is a masterpiece. Each on their own, each of these movies, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, each a masterpiece in its own right. Standalone films. But also as part of the trilogy of the prequel set, episodes 1, 2, and 3, an epic masterpiece. The prequel trilogy is an all-time epic masterpiece of filmmaking, storytelling, and myth world building. A lot of politics in The Phantom Menace, as we've said, and religious thinking, so to speak, as we've already indicated and explained. And then you have Jar Jar, the key to all of this, as in The Phantom Menace is the greatest kids movie ever made. Possibly only equaled by Spy Kids 3D by Robert Rodriguez. An all-time epic masterpiece, believe me, for a kids movie. And by any standard, whether a kids movie or just a piece of art, any way you'd like to see it hanging on your wall or on your iPhone or even on your watch, thanks to Jar Jar. An all-time epic masterpiece. CGI, computer-generated images, digital film, miniature sets, props, real costumes, including Ahmed Best as Jar Jar Binks, and other all-time epic. Jar Jar is the key. Not only the all-time funniest character we've ever seen in Star Wars, also one of the most insightful and articulate, so to speak. Jar Jar Binks represents the every person in the room. Jar Jar Binks is the first time we've ever seen a character as part of the main cast of the characters in the story that's just a regular person. Just some random guy that they met on the street, so to speak, as part of the invasion process of Naboo by the Trade Federation, as we will see as we flesh out the story here of the Phantom Menace. But then, by random chance, it seems, this guy, Jar Jar Binks, and the Jedi meet up, and next thing you know, he's traveling the galaxy with the Jedi. Hilarious! Jar Jar Binks is truly the funniest character I've ever seen in any Star Wars episode or chapter. Now on to Anakin Skywalker, portrayed beautifully and expertly by Jake Lloyd, an all-time classic actor. I guarantee Jake Lloyd deserves an Oscar for Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace. Yeah, look it up, starting with the opening title crawl to The Phantom Menace. And Jar Jar is the key. Nothing is wasted in this movie. Nothing is to be thrown away, and nothing is done in overboard fashion for the sake of shocking. But yes, I will say it is shocking to see these images in this fashion here as we've never seen it before in any Star Wars movie, let alone any movie. The Phantom Menace is an all-time epic classic masterpiece. Fantastic, beautiful story. Beautiful kid story, if you will. About a boy, 10-year-old boy, Anakin Skywalker. When we first meet Anakin, he's a slave onto the planet of Tatooine, living with his mother, also a slave. And then through a series of events and choices, and including, as Qui-Gon Jinn would say, according to the will of the Force, that's one way of looking at it, these events unravel the reality that we saw earlier, changing it into something completely different as they leave the planet of Tatooine with Anakin a freed slave, but his mother remaining on the planet. Anakin is torn between the love for this quest to see the galaxies, the systems, the universe, so to speak, and the sadness he feels at leaving his mother, remains a slave on Tatooine. And then, of course, we meet Padme Amidala, a.k.a. Queen Amidala, C-3PO and R2-D2, and, of course, Obi-Wan Kenobi, the learner, the Padawan learner, the young Jedi Knight that is still a Padawan, and his teacher is Qui-Gon Jinn, and, of course, Chancellor Palpatine, a.k.a. Darth Sidious, and, of course, Boss Nass, and he's the leader of the Gungans. And friends, that's all the time we have for today. Remember that the prequels is the best Star Wars, friends. Jar Jar is the key, and I am your host, Mr. The Prequels. May the Force be with us, and we'll see you next time. Under God's demand, his life belongs to me.
We're looking at The Phantom Menace, written and directed by George Lucas. An all-time epic masterpiece. And we're looking at the scene, today we're looking at one particular scene in this movie, where the group that is now the main character group of this story, as we've met them now, as we first meet Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn, two Jedi Knights that have been dispatched on a secret mission by the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. And these two Jedi, Obi-Wan Kenobi, the learner, the young Padawan, and Qui-Gon Jinn, the teacher, the master Jedi. And they follow the Trade Federation's invasion to the planet of Naboo, onto the planet of Naboo, stowing aboard the invasion ships, where upon meeting on the land of Naboo, they run into Jar Jar Binks, where Qui-Gon saves Jar Jar, and then they both encounter Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Jar Jar then says, "You saved me again." And then, of course, later this comes into play when that group, that trio now, Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Jar Jar Binks, swim underwater to the city of the Gungans, where we meet Boss Nass and Captain Tarpus, and we learn that Jar Jar Binks is not welcome there in the city of the Gungans. And he is to be, as the boss of the Gungans says, the leader of the Gungans, Boss Nass says, punished. And then he laughs about it. And then we see Jar Jar, very sad, not happy at all, reacting to this pronouncement by Boss Nass that he is to be punished. Where then Qui-Gon uses his influence, as we saw him using the Jedi mind trick, and we've already seen their skills with the lightsaber, as well as force power as they run with super speed to escape the destroyer droids. But here, as we meet the Gungans now in this city of the Gungans under the water, Qui-Gon uses the mind trick and then calls to the Gungans themselves and reminds them that their gods demand that Jar Jar Binks now belongs to Qui-Gon, in the sense of his life now belongs to him, as Qui-Gon saved Jar Jar. And thus, in this way, Jar Jar now owes a life debt to Qui-Gon. And Qui-Gon uses this to both his advantage as he's seeking someone to help them navigate through the planet core, and possibly having compassion upon this fellow, this person, this alien to us, this Gungan, meeting Jar Jar Binks, as Qui-Gon has compassion on Jar Jar and possibly wants to keep him from being punished, as Boss Nass puts it. So Jar Jar Binks, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Qui-Gon Jinn are in this transport that travels through the water, traveling through the planet core from this Gungan city to the other part of the civilization of this planet, Naboo, to the Naboo, so to speak, as they refer to them in the movie. And they meet Queen Amidala and her entourage, security forces. We see the technology that the Naboo use, both in military defense as well as traveling and flying about the galaxy. And their technology regarding communication with holograms and what look to be as television screens, droids, and so on. And then, as they're traveling from Naboo to escape the clutches of the Trade Federation and the droid army, that is the Trade Federation army, we meet R2-D2, who repairs the ship in flight as they travel through the blockade, breaking through the military barrier set up by the Trade Federation to escape to Coruscant, the central system of the Republic. And then, of course, we see the fuel is an issue as well as the hyperdrive is leaking. And so they decide to land the whole crew on the planet Tatooine, where we meet Anakin Skywalker. Anakin Skywalker, a 10-year-old boy, a slave along with his mother, owned by Watto, a local businessman and avid gambler. And this part of the personality of Watto plays towards Qui-Gon Jinn's advantage as he gambles to gain the freedom of Anakin, making a bet with Watto that Anakin will win the pod race, beating Sebulba. As Watto says, Sebulba always wins. So Qui-Gon wagers the racing pod and his ship against, as he says, the boy and his mother for their freedom. Watto throws the dice. I happen to have a chance cube right here. We'll let fate decide, he says. So he throws the chance cube. Blue, the boy, red, his mother, and so on. And using the Force, Qui-Gon brings about the chance cube to land on Blue. So, as a side note here, we can see how Qui-Gon Jinn uses the Force to great advantage often as he is able. Using the Jedi mind trick as well as gambling. Always trusting the living Force, as Qui-Gon would put it. And here's where we learn more about the Force through the teaching of Qui-Gon Jinn. And we learn about the midichlorians as well, as Qui-Gon is explaining the Force to Anakin the night before the race. The pod race. Speaking of the pod race, The Phantom Menace, written and directed by George Lucas. An all-time epic masterpiece. All-time epic masterpiece. Yep, starting with the opening title crawl. And so, the pod race, an absolute masterpiece. Groundbreaking special effects. All-time epic editing. Scene by scene, frame by frame. An all-time epic masterpiece. Yeah, and here in the pod race we see Anakin as the pilot. And he has Jedi reflexes. And this is why he appears to be able to move so quickly. Because he can see things before they happen. And again, here we see this because of Qui-Gon Jinn, as he is explaining this to Anakin's mother. So we're learning about the Force, and we're seeing this world. We meet the group of people. Padme, Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, R2-D2, C-3PO, Queen Amidala, a.k.a. Padme Amidala, and not to mention Senator Palpatine, also known as, in Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, Chancellor Palpatine, and then later to be revealed in Episode 3 as Darth Sidious, a Sith Lord, the Dark Lord of the Sith, who was actually controlling the Senate, according to Count Dooku, as he was telling this to Obi-Wan Kenobi in Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Another all-time epic masterpiece. Attack of the Clones, all-time epic masterpiece. The Phantom Menace, written and directed by George Lucas. An all-time epic masterpiece. So Anakin wins the race and then discovers that he is free, but his mother remains a slave. Another all-time epic masterpiece, this scene where Anakin must choose, go live his dream and see the galaxy and train to become a Jedi. Basically, going and making his dreams come true, as his mother told him he's now able to do, now that he's free. But he must choose between making his dreams come true and leaving his mother, or staying and remaining on Tatooine, but being with his mother. That he loves his mother, and his mother loves him. Another all-time epic scene, written and directed by George Lucas. The Phantom Menace, an all-time epic masterpiece. And I am your host, Mr. The Prequels. And now on to the characters performing these roles, or these characters as they're being performed by actors performing these roles. Qui-Gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson. Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by Ewan McGregor. Jar Jar Binks, played by Ahmed Best. Another all-time epic. Anakin Skywalker, as played by Jake Lloyd. An all-time epic masterpiece. Jake Lloyd deserves an Oscar for Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace. Yeah, Jake Lloyd deserves an Oscar for Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace. Written and directed by George Lucas. An all-time epic masterpiece. And I am your host, Mr. The Prequels. Padme Amidala, aka Queen Amidala, played by Natalie Portman. An all-time epic masterpiece. All-time! R2-D2, played by Kenny Baker. Another all-time epic masterpiece. And of course, C-3PO, played by Sir Anthony Daniels. Another all-time epic masterpiece. And of course, Senator Palpatine, aka Darth Sidious, a Dark Lord of the Sith, masterfully played by Ian McDiarmid. Yeah, Ian McDiarmid. Another all-time epic masterpiece. And Shmi Skywalker, masterfully played by Pernilla August. Another all-time epic masterpiece. And going forward, of course, these characters in some way remain relevant to the story in episode 2 and in episode 3. The Phantom Menace, written and directed by George Lucas. An all-time epic masterpiece. And I am your host, Mr. The Prequels. And that's all the time we have for today, dear friends. Remember, your focus determines your reality. The Prequels is the best Star Wars. And I am your host, Mr. The Prequels. May the Force be with us. And we'll see you next time.
Now you can make your dreams come true, and you're free.